Those wins, absolutely huge.
Yeah, and it looks like now that we have headsets on, we can talk about some deck lists a little bit more. Hermanni bringing back their trusty Hisuian Gudra by the looks of things. It's been a really decent shot and choice for the tournament, behind Lost Zone Box and Lugia, but it's actually the third most popular deck in Day 2. It's had a really good conversion from Day 1.
Yeah, it really has. A lot of players with Hisuian Gudra kind of came in, and it wasn't the most popular deck, although it was absolutely out there and it was one of those, but it has really converted at a very, very high rate. And yeah, that Hisuian Gudra, it's a deck that we've seen. It's a lot of hype coming in, but it was very much seen as that second tier deck. It wasn't being talked about in the same breath as your Lost Box, your Gardevoir, your Lugia. But I think the conversion we see here is basically saying, look, maybe it's not the most popular deck out there, but the players who know this deck and are playing at a high level are doing incredibly well with it.
And I'm actually a little bit surprised to see Ithiel. They're playing Lost Zone Box, and it wouldn't sound that surprising, but the last few times I've come up against Ithiel and seen them around tournaments, they've been playing various controlling archetypes. They've played Stonjourner, they've played Mewtwo v Union Control in Warsaw, that's when I actually came up against them, and also in Bochum, so doing well with various controlling archetypes, but instead going for a different approach. Maybe they're waiting for Sunder to figure out the control deck before jumping on that bandwagon later on in the format.
Yeah, figure out how it works and then kind of go from there. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. We're going to see the Lost Zone going a little bit silly here. Both players really trying to get into the Lost Zone, get those Comfey Flower selecting, get those Chorus's Experiment nice and early, and, you know, really go from there.
It seems as though Ithiel is going to be playing a Forest Seal Stone variant with the Raikou, the Dragonites, but also everyone's favorite, the Kyogre combo, the option to Aqua Storm. He's playing triple Energy Recycler as well, so that'll be something on his mind throughout this game. I actually think it's very solid against Hisuian Gudra, where your deck doesn't have much like raw damage output. Sure, Dragonite might chip in at times because it has over 200 hit points, so it can tank Gudra attacks at times. But I also think that a great way to get around Hisuian Gudra is sort of bossing or roping a Gudra to the bench, so then you can catalyze and ignore that sort of reduction from a Rolling Iron and get maximum damage with your Kyogre.
Yeah, and that is always very, very big. Of course, we've got that rule in Pokemon where if your active Pokemon has one of those effects, like it's reducing damage, one of the ways around that is to throw it back to the bench. Yeah. Sometimes you'll even see people use something like Escape Rope to push it to the bench, then use Boss's Orders to drag it active. So you're still attacking the same Pokemon that was in the active. The difference is you've then reset that damage reduction, or, you know, there's plenty of other Pokemon we've seen over the years that prevent damage or things along those lines, and just being able to get them to the bench, bring them back active again, or even just hit them when they're on the bench is absolutely huge, because we've seen throughout the stream so far, Gudra with that damage reduction, and then with the Moisture Star just healing all the damage off, yeah. It can take 4, 5, 6 turns to take down a 2-prize Hisuian Gudra. That's not how you win games.
Yeah, you got to piece together some combos. You got to get a little bit tricky at times if you want to get around this Rolling Iron, because that 80 damage reduction is just absolutely massive. Already seeing some awkward prize cards for Ithiel. VIP passes are so important to get yourself in the game. And also Raikou, that sort of higher damage output Pokemon that you sometimes look for in the matchup. So that's something we'll have to follow throughout this game.
Yeah, Hermanni, a couple of one-offs, nothing terrible there. Things like Mirage Gate that you'd like, but you're always going to have some good cards prized. It's the one-offs and where there's multiple of the same thing. That's where we start looking at the prizes and going, oh, all cards are particularly good for a particular matchup. But it does look like we are going off here. And it looks like Ithiel is going to be taking the first turn here. We've got a Comfey in the active and a Radiant Greninja on the bench. That's a good start.
But it looks like we need some draw from concealed cards and flower selecting if we're going to get any more basics down onto this board.
Ooh.
And that's really important, especially for the Gudra deck, where you need to establish your basics as quickly as possible. Also a tough choice. You don't yet know what build your opponent is playing. There's real potential that Ithiel hasn't sat closely enough to Hermanni in the tournament yet to know which archetype he's up against. And we're seeing Kyogre versus Sableye, and immediately we say goodbye to the Aqua Storm dream in this game.
Because we saw yesterday in one of the games with Isaiah Bradner using Sableye to win the mirror match, we saw how key Sableye is in the mirror match. So although Ithiel plays two, you kind of want them both. But then we saw how good Kyogre can be. But actually, all we see there is just a retreat from Comfey into the Greninja, and that's it. That's turn one.
And yeah, my apologies. Ithiel is not the one on the Gudra deck, but even still, it really hurts that you're getting rid of Kyogre. That's your highest damage output card in this matchup. It's Hermanni who actually is going to be having a better time of things here with their opening search with the Battle VIP pass. And we can see Pokemon coming to the front, Energy coming to the back. That seems to be something that a lot of players are picking up on now, speeding up their opening deck search, save time for everyone. Obviously, as we've already said, they've avoided ties. This is a great way to save yourself time, but also make sure you're diligent checking those prize cards.
Yeah, really making sure what you've got there, because especially with these Lost Zone decks, you flower select, you see 2 cards. One goes to your hand, one goes to the Lost Zone. Well, if you've got a card which, if you're playing 2 of a card and one of them is prized, you really don't want to throw it in the Lost Zone unless you absolutely have to. You know, we've seen before players have 2 of their free V-Stars prized. Well, in that situation, you absolutely cannot Lost Zone a V-Star. Whereas if you've got plenty of Pokemon search, maybe you can get rid of one of your free V-Star and still be able to navigate the game quite nicely. So having that information is absolutely crucial. It's crucial in every matchup, but when you are going to be Lost Zoning, you know, well, 10 cards is really the goal, you need to know which cards are in your prizes, because sometimes that combination of Lost Zone and prizes can literally just lose you the game.
Yeah, you put yourself in that position where you think you've got something and then you're just caught short at some point in the game. It has happened a number of times, but I'm sure with players in this respectable record, it's going to be a lot less common, as Hermanni's getting a really solid basis going here. I think there's already the Goodra in hand as well to go alongside the Greninja and double Comfey, so certainly going to be working towards 4 in the Lost Zone. I think it would be huge if we could even see an escape rope here. That would be a massive way to start using Spit Innocently for maximum tempo, not only taking a prize, but also removing Ithiel's option to fuel their own Lost Zone.
Yeah, escape rope when there's only 1 Pokemon on the bench is brilliant, because it's just free gusting. You just get to bring up the only Pokemon on the bench. And, you know, we saw Ithiel there very deliberately leave the Greninja in the active because it can take a hit from Cramorant. It's got more than 110 hit points. We've seen there's a lot throughout the stream, just leaving a Pokemon in the active that can take a hit from Cramorant, so you're not giving up that early prize. So that would be absolutely huge. We do see Chorus's Experiment coming down turn 1 here, and we now see the combination. There's already 3 cards in the Lost Zone, so I mean, we could even see just an Energy for a Natural Retreat, Escape Rope, and that would be enough here. So really not much needed for Hermanni here to get this turn 1 KO. It's Escape Rope and some other pivot option would be it.
Yeah, picking up that Melanie as well. That is the new backup energy acceleration that Goodra has in the post-rotation format. It's a lot slower without Scoop Up Net to get 7 in your Lost Zone. So now the backup option is Melanie to help you, again, continue churning through cards in the deck, but also can allow you to manually attach plus Melanie your way towards a Goodra. But Hermanni may not really need it this game because he's doing so well at fueling that Lost Zone early on. It does look like he's going to need help from flower selecting if he is going to cherry-pick that Escape Rope. It's currently not in hand.
No, that is a little bit unfortunate. That would be the card you're really looking for here. Of course, we had an Energy in hand, used it for the Greninja to try and kind of dig that little bit further, try and get that Escape Rope. Hasn't managed to find it yet, but between the flower selecting and Chorus's Experiment, it's not going to take very much to get there. We just need the Escape Rope, and it does look like we are going to see the first flower selecting here. Can this be what you're looking for?
See Chorus, and if it's a debate, it's got to be a strong card against this Chorus.
Yeah, because usually Chorus is an absolute just grab it as fast as you can.
Definitely going into the tank here. Hermanni seems like a difficult choice. What gets you further through? It looks like it's a switch. So Hermanni's playing for maximum tempo here with the additional flower selecting to get to 7. It would be monstrous if you hit the Escape Rope. If you miss the Escape Rope, it's actually really awkward to hit with Cramorant in this list specifically because you do not have Sableye to mop up the remaining damage.
He hit boss's orders, but he's already used a supporter for the turn, so that's not going to do much good. So we do potentially have a manual retreat for 1 more flower select.
Yeah, I personally prefer... So we've seen both selects now.
I thought we could get another one down.
I much prefer the Etern attachment onto Goodra here. The 110 doesn't seem relevant, so you can just roll through this Greninja later if need be. So I definitely prefer this defensive approach now that Hermanni unfortunately whiffed off of that many cards.
Oh, that is upsetting. The Escape Rope would have been absolutely huge, but yeah, I agree. The 110 onto Greninja, you can finish it with a Sableye maybe later on, but to be fair, these Goodra lists don't always play Sableye, and yeah, there isn't even one in the list, so that 110 does nothing. There's no point even doing it.
Yeah, it was rope on bust, essentially, for Hermanni that turn. As we move back over to Ithiel, who is able to conceal cards with Greninja once again, does have Colrus, and this is where they can get on their journey with the Lost Zone. Plenty of switch options for Ithiel here. An easy choice of Battle VIP Pass. And now it's whether or not you feel Rope is more helpful than Switch cards. And looks like having the option for both seems pretty reasonable here, as we will have a number of selects coming in now as well. as a Comfey was also taken from this chorus.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. They're just really trying to work up towards all of those attackers. Of course, here it's a very different kind of game plan. You're not building up to something like that big Gudra. So, you know, things like the turn 1 Cramorant, you're going to see them a lot more in a list like this. Certainly taking that KO on the Comfey would be big. I mean, if there could be some gussing and attack into Gudra, that would be amazing, but I think that's probably a bit too much to ask on turn 1.
I see Lost Vacuum and Forest Seal Stone, so there could be a world we get to 7 and Greninja down both Comfey this turn. That would be certainly the best play that Ithiel has available right now.
I mean, that's not an easy play to pull off, but yeah, absolutely. Getting 2 prizes and taking out both the Comfey would be absolutely brilliant. We do see an escape rope from Ithiel here, which just honestly seems a little bit mean after what we saw turn 1.
Showing off that you just had it all along, flaunting that. I'm not sure if we have the option to actually get to 7 here. This gets us to 5. We could just attach the forest to anything and not get the activation and simply vacuum it away. Now that we've Beach Court and you could spend double gate, I believe they're both in hand. The issue is these are really vital resources, right? They're expensive to spend double gate on this Greninja play if you're not getting another Pokemon down at the same time. So it is instead going to be Cramorant coming into the active, staying a little bit more conservative and not activating those Mirage Gates just yet.
And the difference is, of course, here with Cramorant, you can then use Sableye later on. You know, these classic Lost Zone decks, they do use Sableye quite a lot. So having a Greninja almost KO'd is far more relevant for Ithiel here than it would be for Hermanni.
Correct.
So it's not such a disappointing play, but we can do better, essentially. There's a better play that was potentially on board that it just never materialized.
Yeah, Ithiel has to respect the longer game approach, and Gudra loves making games as long as possible, extending the game just by continuing to roll and reduce the damage it takes. So Ithiel recognizing that they want to keep hold of these Mirage Gates for bigger targets like Dragonite possibly later on in the game.
Yeah, that's always a good thing when you've got an answer to, you know, those big cards. So we do see a switch here into Gudra V-Star, and it looks like we're ready to roll already. We've got the energy, we've got the evolution, we are rolling, literally and figuratively, taking out that Cramorant. So Hermanni takes the first prize, and with Gudra rolling, a potential, you know, reserve Gudra on the bench, and no prize is already being given up. I like the start from Hermanni here.
Yep. This is the dream for Gudra. You're doing pretty well on the Lost Zone, so you can get yourself to Mirage Gate if anything happens to go astoundingly wrong with your current V-Star. But it means that essentially you're just in this position now where you're happy just turn attaching to your next Gudra. You simply just have to evolve up the next one, and then, yeah, we're going to be locked into this rolling iron essentially for the entire remainder of the game. And currently, Ithiel only has weak single prize Pokemon that you can simply announce an attack into no matter what.
Yeah, and that means you're going to be taking an attack. You're going to not just be taking a prize every turn, but you're going to be constantly resetting that ability whereby you're taking 80 less damage from attacks. And, I mean, Ithiel's got some options against it, you know, things like Dragonite, things like Raikou that can hit a bit more damage than something like a Cramorant. But none of these are particularly great at taking giant one-hit KOs. I mean, Dragonite can with a choice spell if you can reset the damage reduction. I mean, that's a lot to ask. And there isn't even a choice spell in the list here for Ithiel anyway. So I think the one-hit KO is basically off the table.
Oh, yeah.
And this is going to be awkward. These Gudra, if you don't have a really specific answer to Gudra, it can get very awkward very quickly.
Yeah, it looks like, especially with the Kyogre now removed from play into the Lost Zone, it feels like it's going to be a long slog with multiple uses of Sableye, because, of course, placing counters is different from dealing damage, so that is one way around Rolling Iron. But you still have to put Hermanni in that position where they first have to get through their Moisture Star and then try and deal with it again. So it's looking like a tough ask for Ithiel, who also doesn't even play Boss's Orders, by the way. Because they're leaning into the Kyogre combo, they just play Escape Ropes to push people's Pokemon around.
Yeah, and that's always a fun way to go about it. And yeah, there's just not a huge amount of damage. I mean, the Dragonite could be relevant as we go later because it can take a hit from that Gudra that only deals 200 damage, so that's nice in a way. But the Gudra that's got all the energy on has got the V-Guard energy anyway, so that's damage reduction is coming in, so it is going to be a little bit of a slog. And the problem is that there are 3 more prizes on Hermanni's board which aren't, you know, your Gudra V-Star, but after that, those last 2, you're basically going to have to go through one Gudra to win this game, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think if we can get to 10 in the Lost Zone, putting like 6 counters on both Gudra makes a lot of sense. Just try and force a Moisture Start early. Could be very solid. Alternatively, Ithiel could be looking towards using Moonlight Shuriken this turn. I see Water Energy coming to the top, so that's a telltale sign that we are looking to use Gudra here.
Greninja.
Greninja, I should say.
Yeah, looking to use
onto the Gudras.
Onto the Gudras, yeah. 90 damage to each would be quite nice. And like you say, that Moisture V-Star, the ideal situation if you're the Gudra player is take a bunch of damage, take a couple of hits, and then completely heal off. Forcing your opponent to use it to heal off 90 damage when you've still got the other damage you did to the other Gudra on the board, that is not getting the best use out of it. So I kind of like this Ithiel here, if this is where they're going, because it's just getting a bunch of damage on the board and hopefully setting up some big attacks. And then maybe Dragonite can come in and start taking some big KOs.
The other alternative is just putting your prize map as there are 4 single prizes. I've heavily damaged one. They're a lower hit point Comfey. I just need to deal with 1 Gudra. And again, it all comes down to trying to force that Moisture Start out early without being fully committed to your damage. So not using your Dragonite that could then get healed off. You need it to be a smaller poke like this one this turn.
Yeah, and then it's awkward because if your opponent doesn't then heal it off, that gives you a much easier route to a KO. So just putting your opponent in an awkward situation. Now, speaking of awkward, Ithiel here is this is not an obvious choice. Does go for the pair of Comfey, taking 2 prizes, choosing to ignore the Gudra for now, which I don't mind at all, but you're going to have to take a Gudra out at some point.
I think I most prefer hitting the V-Star as well as the Cramorant, and then you're giving yourself that way into just knocking out 1 V, and then you're just dealing with single prize Pokemon for the remainder of the game. I think that would be my preferred method, but Ithiel is trying to get into the mix, just racing in those prize cards. Maybe there was something in the prizes that he was trying to cherry pick out as well.
That is always an option. Of course, your Greninja is going to be going down now to the Gudra. There is nothing, basically the only thing in Ithiel's deck that can tank a hit at all is your Dragonite. Everything else is getting 1-hit KO'd here, so you've got to be a little bit careful. This isn't one of those games where you're going to be able to use Radiant Greninja 2 or 3 times. Yes, I know Clara's in the deck and you can recover it, but then you're going...
Look at this. Hermanni with the Raihan. They have their own Greninja. Let's not forget, we could see a reverse Moonlight Shuriken here, and Hermanni could be taking a 2-prize turn, even though there's only single prizes on the board.
Now, we did see Raihan going for that Colress's experiment just kind of for next turn. Is a Mirage Gate in hand? Because that would make a big difference.
Well, I feel like if you're not taking it from the Raihan, it's got to be there for you somewhere.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, that would be a bit silly. If it's the card you desperately need, you can search for any card, be like, nah, I'm good.
The only thing we're missing right now is we're only at 4 cards in the Lost Zone, so it may be Hermanni just saying, hey, respect me, Ithiel. Make sure, remember that I have this option, as we do just roll this turn and try and set ourselves up for a Moonlight Shuriken, make Ithiel also find Manaphy this turn.
And I kind of like this because it's forcing Ithiel to go and get a Manaphy or potentially go after the Radiant Greninja. But if you're going after Radiant Greninja, you're not going after Gudra. So it's basically just saying, hey, my Gudra are up and rolling and I'm taking a prize every turn. How would you like to have to now deal with this as well? This seems like an awkward thing for you to have to worry about.
And I think this Nest Ball might be the turning point where we will see Dragonite come in. I know Ithiel has a number of he has double Recycler in hand, and it seems like a great time to try and use Recycler in gates. Yep, it's Dragonite time. So Dragonite has that big 250 damage attack and has, most importantly, 230 hit points. So it stays out of range of a Rolling Iron from Hisuian Gudra V-Star. And that's what Ithiel's going to try and use here to try and double dip a big amount of damage with this Dragon Gale.
Well, have we seen the Choice Belt yet?
Yeah, so there is Choice Belt.
There is
the only other card that Hermanni can use to offset this and make sure he can one-hit KO the Dragonite. But Ithiel's not seen that card yet.
No, absolutely not. And it's not something that every Gudra plays. It's played in some decks here and there. Sometimes the 1-off, sometimes as a 2-off. There is 1 in this deck, and often it is kind of 1 or 0. So
Ithiel just zoning away their Manaphy as well.
Oh no.
That is very awkward.
Yeah.
It was so that they could Colress. You understand it, but it feels rough.
But that's the thing about these Lost Zone decks. Sometimes you will Flower Select, you will see 2 cards, and you desperately need both of them, but that's not the way it works. You have to drop one in the Lost Zone, and I mean, Hermanni's looking there and going, I know some decks play double Manaphy, but I feel fairly confident he's probably not. Most lists don't.
Yeah, does that mean that Ithiel is forced to use Sableye this turn instead, just to remove that threat of Greninja. Now that Manaphy is in your Lost Zone, I feel like that is a better defensive play.
Yes.
If you could Lost Mine, finish off the Greninja now, and again start to sprinkle on some of these Goodras for easier prizes.
I've got to think that's where you're going with this, because otherwise that Greninja can go unchecked and just take a double prize next turn. So I think you do have to take out the Greninja, and at least it's not going to take much. It's 2 damage counters. So, you know, because we had the Cramorant attack earlier, so at least that does give you 10 other damage counters that you can drop around the board, maybe try and set up a Goodra KO or something along those lines. But I think that's got to be the play now, because otherwise, you know, a couple cards in the Lost Zone, Mirage Gate, and you're giving up 2 prizes. And
how often do we see this? The recycle it into immediately let me access these cards with Mirage Gate. It looks like the Psychic is being eyed up, so that's certainly on Ithiel's mind as well. Definitely makes sense to me. You've got away with it for now, but Hermanni is edging closer to 7 in their own Lost Zone, so you have to start respecting this Greninja.
Yeah, you can't just let the Greninja go unchecked. Manaphy would be a great way to do it, because we've seen, when Greninja... If Greninja's just free energy, discard 2 to do 90 to the active, that is not a particularly good attack. It is when it can take a double prize, and also, you would imagine it would go after both the Comp Phase, so you take 2 prizes, but you also completely shut off their drawing engine, making their life so much more difficult going back through the game. So you've got to deal with the Greninja, and this is why I liked the Greninja going down with the energy, because Hermanni's like, look, I know you want to take out my Goodra, but have you seen Greninja? That's actually really annoying as well. And then you're making your opponent choose between which of the threats is the most annoying at the time.
Yeah, it's incredible that Goodra literally just plays the Goodras themselves, 1 Cramorant, 1 Greninja, and still it manages to be this flexible of a deck. So many threats being represented just by the burst potential of Mirage Gate. As we do see the Beach Court, and it's going to be Lost Mine time.
I mean, well, like we said, it had to be. You take out the Greninja, and then the question is, is there a world where you can put enough damage on a Goodra to potentially finish it off with a Dragonite? Or do you
I definitely like 2 onto the benched Goodra, because even if it V-stars, then you could try and go for a Gust knockout. But also putting any amount on here also seems very reasonable. All right, ignoring the Hisuian Goodra V. That gives Hermanni the chance. Oh, no, of course, there's no boss's orders in Ithiel's list, so it has to go through this V-star.
Yeah. Yeah, no boss's orders means that you can't be just gusting up and KOing. You essentially have got to pick off the bench or just go after the active. But if Hermanni realizes there's no boss's orders, then that really does create a nice situation where you can keep your Goodra a little bit out of range. And sure, you've got to be looking out for Sableye.
There it is, the Lost Mine.
There is the Lost Mine.
We love the graphic back here. Let us know if you like the Lost Zone graphic back home. We're working hard for that one.
Oh, so there we saw it, and I kind of like setting this up, but there is a point where you find that your opponent's not playing boss's orders, and that lets you play in a different way, which can really give you a big advantage when you kind of figure out that that's not an option.
Yeah, I would say 1 copy is almost considered a staple in Lost Zone variants, but Ithiel, because they have that emphasis on Kyogre, they've decided to make the cut, which is definitely reasonable, but also makes it so much more awkward when your opening Flower Select forces you to get rid of that Kyogre.
Kyogre or Sableye, and if it was a mirror match, which it could have been from the opening cards, you can't get rid of one of your 2 Sableye. You just absolutely can't. Maybe if we go back in time, maybe if you feel new, maybe then you keep the Kyogre, knowing the potential that you've got there. Either way, it is unfortunately a moot point now. We've got Hermanni here, and it does look like we are going for another Comfey, but there's not a huge amount you need here. It's going to be very much just keep kind of plugging away with Goodra, but getting some more cards in the Lost Zone to give the option for things like Mirage Gate will be very big going in the next couple of turns.
Yeah, it seems like dig towards, there it is, digs towards Choice Belt. That could be a big card to hang on to. I think that's one of the biggest cards that he could have seen here.
Absolutely.
Not for this turn, of course, but going to be massive to respond on the Dragonite at some point. So Hermanni's perfectly well prepped here to come back in with a Rolling Iron.
Yeah, so we see the KO onto... Well, we don't see the KO onto the Sableye yet.
I think they're doing some Moisture Star math, whether or not 50 is safe. We've got the reduction of 80 from the roll itself, as well as a reduction of 30 from V-Guard energy. This is essentially the biggest decision in Hisuian Goodra's toolkit, when to use that massive Moisture Star ability. Sometimes it can feel wasteful to get rid of only 5 damage counters, but we are going to see that. Hermanni thinking he can get far enough ahead just with this little bit of heal.
Yeah, and it's one of those awkward situations. Of course, the V-Star power, you're limited to once during the game. That's why we got the little marker we flip over when you've used it. But it's one of those,
Well, hey.
You don't want your opponent to, really stretch and get the KO when you're this far ahead anyway, and you're doing this well in the game. I don't know, obviously the prizes are even. We can see the board. It's not, the only thing that can really go wrong here is a KO on the Gudra. If you can keep that on the board for another turn or two, that is going to make a huge difference. So it's more just don't take the risk, because, something like a rope boss or something like that could have just been really devastating.
Ithiel going to search out their next Sableye, but they are running out of turns to try and piece something together here. And I don't believe Ithiel plays any hand disruption whatsoever. It's not common to play hand disruption in many Lost Zone variants.
No.
The Gudra is often running the Roxanne, but the Lost Zone box builds are so focused on their speed and just the sheer number of switch cards they have to play to support their engine. And Ithiel's list is no different here. So they may have to try and get in with the Dragonite. I always feel it's safest to go in with Dragonite as early as possible, because Hermanni is now holding on to that monster hand size. You have to assume that if they are playing the belt, they can get there.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be really awkward here, and that could well end up, finishing game one. Dragonite comes in, yay, look how big and beefy I am, I can take a hit. Oh, no, wait, no, I can't. And then your opponent's down to one prize remaining, and you still haven't gone through the Gudra, and that is, and I think that's why Hermanni went for the Moisture Star. You've got the return KO on Dragonite, you're not getting one hit KO'd, so let's just focus on this, keep the Gudra on the board for a little while longer, because if you KO that Dragonite, the game is as good as over at that point.
Ithiel has Colrus up against Lightning Energy. We know there's a Lightning in his discard pile already, so just going to have to make sure whether or not it's safe to just maybe get the turn attachment onto Dragonite, or if they can weave together some other combo here. Maybe using Mirage Gate alongside getting your Psychic Energy also out of the deck could be a consideration. I don't think we see Psych Energy, so we are in a bit of a pickle.
I don't think there's a Mirage Gate in hand, though, so I don't think he's got enough energy to really piece it together. Plus, there's no Psychic Energy.
We have the Forest Seal Stone still for him, so that's a big piece. The Forest Seal Stone could just grab him any individual card out of the deck.
Did hit Mirage Gate off Colrus' Experiment if he wants it, and that Psychic Energy if he wants to go for Sableye, so yeah, this was good. They were basically the two cards he really wanted to give him the options of what to attack with. Hit them both off the Colrus' Experiment, job's a good one.
Yeah, and we have the Energy Recycler in hand as well, so can simply recycle the Lightning Energy if he now wants to use Mirage Gate and finally power up this Dragonite.
Yeah, we're going to see a big hit from the Dragonite, or we're going to see an attack from the Sableye. I don't mind either of the problem is, Hermanni is going to KO the Dragonite and the Sableye, and that's going to be game. Those are the last three prizes. So the question is, can Ithiel go and get those last three prizes before this happens? Having one prize here is going to be nice and easy. I mean, no, I think we're a little too far away from two prizes. Not quite enough damage. But you can KO the Cramorant or you can KO the Comfey here, and then you can drop some damage on the Gudra, and then hope that Dragonite can finish it off the following turn. That's a lot to ask for. It does look like it's going to be the Comfey, and I like this because the Comfey is way more important than the Dragonite right now.
Yeah, I think Ithiel is really just putting his eggs in the basket of I can dodge belt and I can allow my Dragonite to attack twice to be in fairly good shape.
Yeah.
This little bit of damage, now that we've had to put 7 on the Comfey, doesn't put you in range, but the 2 on Gudra now makes a ton of sense because Hermanni has spent their V-Star power, so you are trying to say, well, either Gudra can't be really used unless they're rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. They're now in range. Of course, Dragonite hits for 250, so if they're not rolling, they are being KO'd by Dragonite. That's why those 2 damage counters end up being so important here. And the thing is, if Dragonite can attack twice, you'll probably win the game. It's lovely, but we know that Hermanni's holding on to a Choice Belt. That Choice Belt is going to get a KO on the Dragonite, and unfortunately, that is going to end the game. There is no hand disruption in Ithiel's list here, so unless I'm missing something, I really like Hermanni here to just KO the Sableye.
This is very clever from Hermanni. Going with the switch to have your V guarded.
Oh, love it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I think that's pretty much just going to be the game, essentially. I really don't feel like Ithiel has many options left now that the Dragonite has been dealt with. Hermanni got there first with the Choice Belt into the Gudra for the KO, and even put themselves in a better position by having the V-Guard on the bench. So now you're reducing damage in the active of your roll and on the bench with your V-Guard energy. So you're really making yourself as safe as possible here. and it looks like there's nothing stopping Hermanni taking his last prize card next turn.
No, that was great. That Dragonite was really the last chance for Ithiel, and unfortunately we've got the choice belt straight into the boss's orders, getting the KO there. And now, I mean, you can drop 12 damage counters with Sableye and then lose the game. That is one option. You can Flower Select and leave a Comfey in the active and lose the game. There's another option. But unfortunately, without any big attacks from Dragonite or from Kyogre, I don't see how this game goes anywhere. I don't see where Ithiel's last two prizes come from. There's an easy KO on the Cramorant to go down to one prize if you want it, but unfortunately that doesn't really do very much to get you closer to winning the game. And there's two Hisuian Goodra which can just immediately KO the Sableye in return to win the game.
Yep, I agree. Not really seeing it here. Ithiel's still playing things out, but I'm not sure where any victory comes from.
The problem here is, even if, you know, let's say best case scenario, you get your Dragonite, you get your Energy, you get your Mirage Gate, Dragonite is up and rolling this turn and attacking, you don't get a KO, but the choice belt is still there to get a return KO and win the game. So even in your best case scenario where your Dragonite is actually attacking this turn, and it looks like Ithiel's got enough in the tank to do so, because of the V-Guard energy on the bench, and the Cramorant, which would definitely be put up from an escape rope, as we see here, there's nothing that's going to give you those two prizes. If there was no Cramorant and the bench Goodra had no V-Guard,
it's a concession from Ithiel. It was essentially down to, can Hermanni mess up their escape ropes? That's all Ithiel was playing towards there. But Hermanni's been around the block and has played their bench very well, as you've just mentioned, Ross. So they were limiting that option, and it's going to be a pretty clean victory there for the Hisuian Goodra.
Yeah, and that was unfortunate. And there were ways. That was not a complete whitewashed game. There were definitely ways where Ithiel could come back into that, but none of them worked out. It had to be an attack with Dragonite, you know, 2 turns in a row, but the choice belt paid to that. Or it had to be a giant attack with the Kyogre to finish out the game, but the Kyogre got lost zone right at the beginning of the game. Now going back, knowing what you're playing against, having played that game, you'd probably just go single Sableye, knowing you might have to Clara it to use it again, but having that option of the Kyogre, because one of the things we saw come big in that game was the lack of boss's orders from Ithiel there.
Yeah.
Just not having that option, because they've gone for Kyogre and they've had to make space for that, but Kyogre does a very similar thing in terms of attacking the bench, so you don't necessarily need the boss's orders.
That's kind of the approach that you go with Kyogre. And as you say, as soon as it's lost zoned, your deck then just becomes one less option, and it really ended up hurting Ithiel throughout the game there. I feel like if they're going to have a better time of it in this next game, of course, we had quite a slow sort of churn towards 7 in the lost zone for them, so trying to pounce a little bit earlier, trying to weave in that Moonlight Shuriken perhaps, trying to get the Dragonite in as quickly as possible so you can try and dodge that one choice belt that Hermanni has in the deck list. Those are going to be the best windows of opportunity for Ithiel here.
And it's worth pointing out, if you're just playing one copy of an item card or a tool card,
even
because they are now differently, yeah, they're different now. And you know, it's hard to get the single out unless you've got something like an Arven which can specifically search for it. It can be very difficult to actually search out that one-of item or tool card. Energy, much easier to search. Supporter cards, much easier to search. We've got cards that will get them nicely, but items and tool cards are not easy to search out when you're playing singlets, so there is a decent expectation you can get that Dragonite rolling quickly, and your opponent just won't hit choice belt.
And as long as that Dragonite sticks around, you're getting huge bursts of damage, even through Rolling Iron. So it is so important to get that online. And time is of the essence, as you say, especially for Ithiel here. That was quite a long first game, so they are going to have to really go like the clappers if they're going to win 2 on the bounce to get their 10th victory at this tournament.
And I do think with the time remaining, that is going to be difficult. And, you know, at the end of the day, take a tie here, win the rest of your games, and that tie could be the thing that puts you into top 8 rather than just missing out. Because obviously you want as many wins as you can.
Oh, sheesh. There's no shot that's your hand.
That is not good. Energy, energy, lost vacuum, and a Mana Feast start.
That is in heavy ball Kyogre as well.
Oh, that is about the worst opening hand prizes combination we've seen. And we've done a lot of these games, Joe, for many years. That is about the worst opening hand we've seen on stream. That is absolutely horrendous.
Top deck of Raikou. We're in this game. Thank goodness, Ithiel. What a top deck to stay in the game, but it ain't much.
It's not much. It really isn't.
It's marginally better than a Rain Splash.
And it's also a 2-prize Pokemon that can be one-hit KO'd with Goodra without a choice belt, and that is a bit of a problem. You don't want that. The whole point of these Lost Zone decks is single prize attackers, and hey, this Dragonite's beefy and you can't really one-hit KO it without your one-off choice belt, but there's 3 Boss's Orders in Hermanni's deck, so getting that Raikou is not going to be that difficult. At some point, that is 2 prizes Hermanni gets for free.
That is just absolutely horrendous. Ithiel plays 11 energy and has seen, what, 5 of them in that opening hand?
5 of the 7.
1 energy recycler, 1 lost vacuum. These are all pieces of your puzzle to help fuel the Lost Zone, but they're most notably avoiding all of your Ball Search. Even your Forest Seal Stones would be outs there. Really, really tough break, and it's a real slap in the face when your opponent's first action is Battle VIP Pass.
Yeah, that card, which only works if on your very first turn of the game against any 2 basic Pokemon out. And this is the problem when it's game 2. If this happens in game 1, you can kind of go, okay, I don't get every game. Not every game is going to go the way I want. I can accept this, let's go to game 2. But if you lose game 1 and this happens in game 2, that's the match. And I mean, if Hermanni knew what Ithiel's hand was, they would be so happy right now, because that's looking very good for getting that 10th win. And as we've said, it's really 12 you need, so 10 is not there. But 3 more rounds, 2 more wins, it's doable.
Hermanni rolling with Goodra. We've heard it before, we're hearing it again. Getting so deep into these tournaments with this trusty deck. And you can see why. Hermanni was in a fantastic position in that first game, getting themselves into a fantastic position in this game. I think crucially, the 2-prize Pokemon that's in play for Ithiel only has 200 hit points as well, so that's always an easy target for Hermanni throughout the game for an easy up trade here with your Rolling Iron. And we'll see how the concealed cards treats Hermanni, as well as possibly a few other actions in his hand.
Yeah, one of the downsides of Hisuian Goodra is that it hits 200. 220 is really the number when you're going after Pokemon V. It's a Boss's Orders onto
Hermanni's
the
hand is actually quite bad as well. They have a lot of Boss's Orders. I think they have Melanie, but no Water Energy to activate it. So they're actually a little bit slower than we thought here.
Oh, retreating.
We're back, fleet-footed.
Just to be clear, that is 2 paid retreats to use Fleetfoot on Raikou here. We've got a Comfey, but there's no way to get the Comfey into the active to start using Flower Selecting. So it is going to be just another pass over to Hermanni. Is there anything in Hermanni's
Hermanni might boss Manaphy again. They play 3 copies of Boss's Orders. It's a little bit troublesome to limit yourself to only 1 throughout the game, but I think you do just probably pass here.
Yeah, it's shutting off your opponent's draw, but you know they're doing pretty bad.
It's back.
It's back. It's another boss on.
Show us the rain splash. Come on.
I mean, the good news is it feels like, look, if it's basic energy you need, I have got basic energy to retreat my Pokemon. That is easy. It's the one thing they've got. So we see a 3rd turn in a row of paying that retreat. Now we see Flower Selecting for a Clara and a Mirage Gate.
How is this happening?
Neither of those cards are useful.
Oh my goodness.
But you can Clara some energy to keep manually retreating.
Yep, just in case. Don't want that Manaphy back in the active, that's for sure. I feel like the gate has to go here. The Clara just seems so... Oh my goodness. The Clara just seems like a better option just to get cards immediately back into your hand, just in case you start drawing towards Radiant Greninja and getting value. Because, of course, we haven't seen a supporter this turn, so just Claraing for 2 energy back seems quite valuable there. But instead, Ithiel's going to hold on tightly to that Mirage Gate and try and work their way to 7 slowly. It's another pass from Hermanni.
Hey, 6 turns time, we're going to have it.
We're getting there, yeah.
To be fair, we got a Nest Ball, and so we're probably just going to see a 2nd Comfey and a manual retreat into it. Beach Court and Mirage Gate, they're both very... Oh, they're both good cards. Yeah, I like the Beach Court here. Goodra, let's just check the retreat cost on that. It's a retreat cost of 3, so Beach Court doesn't help Hermanni.
Yep.
So I kind of love this a little bit. And this has got to be for a 2nd Comfey. Or maybe Greninja if it's in the deck. Yeah,
Greninja's in the deck, but I agree. I think especially because he's already gripping onto Mirage Gate, more Comfey just sounds like the right move here.
Yeah.
You've got to start fueling your Lost Zone. You've got to get yourself to Mirage Gate as quickly as possible and pounce on Hermanni's poor start. Both players are really getting a rough time of things, but still somehow in this game because they're being equally unfortunate.
And there is a question here, you know, if you're going after the Greninja, that Clara would be pretty useful. You've got a bunch of basic energy in your discard pile. Getting that back to fuel Greninja would actually be really quite nice. Start getting, you know, you've got Beach Court to retreat, so you could potentially start getting some attachments onto your Raikou. And, you know, we're talking a couple of turns away, and it's not like Ithiel knew this was where we were going to be. But right now, I'd really want that Clara in my hand.
Well, it could have been used the turn he found it as well, so it wouldn't have even been an issue if they had Flower selecting into the dream scenario of a Colress. But regardless, we are going to see the Radiant Greninja. There's still plenty of energy in Ithiel's hand, and they are playing 3 copies of Energy Recycler, so they can sort of use them at will and often just spam that concealed cards ability, which is one of the strongest cards, abilities, I should say, on a basic Pokemon we've ever seen. It's found its way into all sorts of different decks. Both players are utilizing this card, and both players have the option to attack with it as well. It's just such an all-round great option in these Lost Zone decks.
Yeah, we like this very much indeed. So it seems like we are going to be using concealed cards on that Greninja. Still a couple of basic energy in hand after this. So we get to see a full 2. It's not like Comfort, you actually get both the cards. We've got a Switch cart and a Lost Vacuum.
Not great. Not great. We're at 2 in the Lost Zone. If you have access to Ball Search, you could vacuum away to get yourself to 4 cards. We're going to see a Fleet-Footed here even from Raikou.
What have we got? It's a Psychic Energy, more basic energy.
The one thing we didn't need to see right now.
Oh my goodness, this is
Ooh, here we go, we're off. Hermanni finally finds a Water Energy. That's not only concealed cards, but also the Melanie is now live in hand. Finally, we're getting into this game with Hermanni.
Yeah, and the thing is that Hermanni doesn't really mind. Like, you won game 1. It doesn't matter if you have like a super slow game 2 when no one's really doing anything, because if the game doesn't finish, you won game 1, you win the match. So you don't really mind this so much. You know, as long as your opponent doesn't start drawing out of it, but if you can start drawing out of it and getting a big advantage here, that's just even better.
A pretty handy Ultra Ball, getting rid of 2 of those Battle VIP pass. Often you're trying to Lost Zone those, but Hermanni's not had that option all game just yet. So just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way with the Ultra Ball. Can search out any Pokemon now with the discard of 2 cards. I think we already have double V-Star in the hand, so this may even be for Cramorant or just more Comphase to hopefully get Flower selecting at some point. I'm still not sure if the Melanie even drew Hermanni any Switch cards, so we may just still be using, well, just passing, evolving up and passing again.
Yeah, unfortunately, but it's still a better start than your opponent's having, and you're up by 1 game with the clock ticking down to 12 minutes. I don't mind this at all for Hermanni. It's not even really whether Hermanni can get going, it's just whether their opponent can actually start doing anything. You would think between the Fleet-Footed, the concealed cards, you know, the limited Flower selecting, at some point, Ithiel would draw something.
You would think that, wouldn't you?
You would. You absolutely would, Joe.
Yeah, there's no Switch cards in Hermanni's hands. It's still just a pass. The Melanie hasn't been kind to Hermanni.
Top text of Chorus's Experiment.
Yeah, that's the Fleet-Footed treat for you. Love to see that. Now we can finally get towards some damage this turn. Let's go.
The actual top deck was another basic energy, which is kind of fantastic.
Yeah, that was expected though, right?
Oh, we knew that was coming. But now we got Chorus's Experiment into at least 2 Chorus's Experiment. Yep. Battle VIP Pass is an easy Lost Zone. There's a Nest Ball to get another basic Pokemon there, and a Switch cart. So you're going to definitely drop the Battle VIP Pass.
Yep. I feel like Chorus is pretty sound to go into the Lost Zone as well. You're clutching 1 already, you're getting to 4. And really 7 is a big unlock for Ithiel's deck so that they can use Mirage Gate. They do still want to get to 10, of course, with Sableye, but with this many switch outs, it should be pretty easy to do that. We're now at 4, so if nothing else, we could see a Cramorant, but it looks like Ithiel is eyeing up bigger picture plans here.
I like the Cramorant here. Of course, you've got the Beach Court for the free retreat, which is always a bonus. You've got the 4 cards in the Lost Zone, so that means you've got the free attack with Cramorant. And certainly, you know, you want to try and establish your board a bit more. You want to get some more cards into the Lost Zone, absolutely. But especially, you know, Ithiel has seen that Hermanni has had a very bad start. There's not much going on at all. So start poking away with Cramorant, and maybe if Hermanni just has a couple of slow turns, you can get the cheekiest of all KOs, a free hit KO on a Hisuian Goodra with a Cramorant. It's not your primary plan, but whatever works.
Yeah, and any pressure poke at this point can force out a Moisture Star, and that could be huge value for you later down the line. Ithiel has Recycler versus Sableye. We know that there's multiple copies of both of these cards, but we also know that Ithiel does like to work towards that Kyogre. and it's been a number of turns, so it is going to be the Sableye hitting the Lost Zone.
I don't mind this. There is a second Sableye in the deck, so that's kind of where we're going with this. And I think we've said a couple of times, looking at game one, it is that Kyogre a lot of the time, which in a match like this, you can really start working towards. So, and you've got Clara. I know we've seen one get lost, but there is another one in the deck. So you can still use multiple Sableye if you want, even with only one in the deck.
Looks like Ithiel is eyeing up the Radiant Greninja play. They can retreat and Lost Zone their own beach court. If they haven't already retreated. Oh, if they have already retreated, they can just use a switch card anyway to move this Comfey out the way. So they'll be getting to 7 with their own Lost Vacuum here. It's really become an important card in many Lost Zone box variants because they're so much slower without Scoop Up Net at getting to that 7. The Vacuum is becoming more and more of a staple card, even getting rid of your own stadium here. But it means we can see some Mirage Gate action now. We are at 7, we're seeing the Recycler, and you know what happens next.
Oh, yes, you recycle the energy back in so that you can Mirage Gate straight away. We'll get 1 water energy and 1, it really doesn't matter. And then you're going to be able to just get the, you're going to KO the Comfey, that's an obvious one. So then you can maybe work towards a Greninja, or you can start getting some damage on the Goodra. You could even hit both the Goodra and try and force out that Moisture Star, and then maybe try and get a KO on the Goodra, knowing that the Comfey is so much more vulnerable to things like Sableye later on down the line. There's a lot of different ways you could go with this Greninja.
I'm such a perfectionist, Ross. We just saw Ithiel put 5 cards back into his deck, and then he chose different energy from his deck to attach, and I'm just here shaking my head. You've given your opponent some free info there, my guy.
Yeah, you unfortunately have. You've given them some information about what is in your deck, and that can be important as the game goes along. But the good news is we are going to see a Moonlight Shuriken here, and it is just onto the 2 Greninja.
I do like this a lot.
Sableye is way better at taking out the those little Pokemon on the bench later on. So you're kind of almost forcing a Moisture Star here. But then there's still going to be a damage one even when the Moisture Star comes out. And this is the point where a Dragonite can come in and be like, hi, miss me?
Yeah, exactly. We finally see a switch card for Hermanni, though, so the Lost Zone counter is finally going to begin. How many turns has it been? My goodness. And already it's a slow choice, so that's not a great indication.
You want the Melanie.
Is a good card.
Oh, but you want the switching as well. So, yeah, I can understand that. That is not a great situation. So it does look like we're going to see an escape rope into a second Comfey here. Get another flower selecting nice and early in the game. And, yeah, it's a fairly easy choice there. You pop the Comfey up. You don't really want it to go down, but it's not the end of the world. You could have given up the Manaphy, but then there's probably not going to be a KO, so the Manaphy's stuck in the active.
Oh, still no help. Nest Ball Melanie with no water in the discard pile.
But you've already Lost Zoned 1 Melanie. Can you really Lost Zone another? No, you can't is the answer.
Yep. Got to keep these around. But yeah, it just means it's another pass here for Hermanni. And now you've got 2 vulnerable Comfey, and the Greninja wasn't dealt with. So Ithiel has another chance at taking 2 prizes here.
I love the idea of just Mirage getting the 2 Comfey, really turning off the engine of that flower selecting, while at the same time knowing that you've got 2 fairly vulnerable Goodra there.
Yeah.
And you're really putting Hermanni in an awkward situation. At that point, any other single prize Pokemon put down would mean Ithiel would only ever need to go through the 1 Goodra. But then if you don't, then your deck is going to be so much slower and more awkward as you're not getting rolling anyway. So I really like the way it feels going for this.
Nice.
Oh my goodness, double battle VIP pass off the Chorus's Experiment. That's what you dream of in the mid-game.
Yep, and has the option to Flower Select and has the backup of Forest Sealstone, so we'll always be able to cherry pick a Mirage Gate out of the deck here. So we'll be getting a Greninja use this turn. So it's going to be a fantastic way to take the Comfey off his opponent's board and continue to slow down their hand, where we've seen Hermanni struggle all game here.
Yeah, I think this is great. We've actually got the Dragonite in hand, potentially coming out later, but I think it's a little bit too early for Dragonite. It needs to be a Greninja this time, taking out the 2 Comfey, going up by a couple of prizes. Of course, the clock is becoming very relevant here. We've only got 5.5 minutes left. Ithiel doesn't really want to tie this game. Neither player wants to tie this game, but at this stage, Hermanni still going for a win. Ithiel at this stage, you're going for a draw. That is the only realistic way to go here. But that 1 match point could make absolutely the difference between a top 16 and a top 32, or a top 16 and a top 8 as we get further down the line. So, no, you don't want to tie, but you'll take it over a loss.
And Ithiel tentatively benching the Dragonite V as well as the Forest Sealstone. Could have simply used it on Raikou, but is choosing to get 1 more Flower Select quickly with the switch carts into the next Comfey. So it looks like we have even more switch cards in hand and can use Forest Seal Stone to get this Mirage Gate at last.
Yeah, and there we see the V-Star marker being flicked over. It kind of has to be for the Mirage Gate. That's how you're going to be getting the real maximum value out of your cards.
There's only one remaining.
Oh, are there any in the prizes, do we know?
We'll have to have another look here.
Because that's going to be very relevant.
Yeah, there is... No, it looks like he may have already taken it. Oh, no, hasn't taken it from prizes just yet. So, yeah, no. There is one remaining in the prize cards.
Okay, because that's absolutely huge, because you're going to probably need a Mirage Gate to set up that Dragonite in a decent amount of time, because that is probably where you're going to go after the Greninja. And the good news is, assuming that Ithiel takes his prizes like every other Pokemon player, you're going to take the bottom two first, and one of those is going to be that Mirage Gate.
As expected, the Greninja is powered up with this final Mirage Gate. There's still the turn attachment as well for Ithiel, so we can slowly get to work on this Dragonite. We know there's a ton of switch cards remaining in hand, so not a problem moving this Comfey out of the active position.
No, and I love this from Ithiel here. It's awkward that we're so late in the game and there's so little time left, because I think Ithiel is playing this absolutely beautifully. Yes, we had very slow starts from both players. We know that. We've been watching the game. But we're still using the right Pokemon to do the right things, take those prizes. Both the Goodra are fairly heavily damaged and absolutely in range here. And now this is kind of an awkward situation for Hermanni, because if you bench another single prize Pokemon, then Ithiel can win the game going through only one Goodra. If you don't bench a single prize Pokemon, you're going to really struggle to get rolling for the rest of the game. So I don't like either of those choices, frankly.
And Hermanni top decks Raihan with no energy in his discard pile. It's a pass.
I don't.
Oh no, it's not a pass, but it will be. I promise you that it will be. Oh my goodness, what a tough
cards
break.
in the Lost Zone, Joe. There's miles away from a Mirage Gate. And like I've said, benching Comfey at this stage just feels bad, because you're giving your opponent a much easier route to victory by making them not go through both the Goodra, but it's...
Oh, it's horrific.
I don't like... There's no real option. What I really like from Hermanni is a magical Mirage Gate into a Goodra, but that's not possible with two cards in the Lost Zone, so it's... I don't think any of these are great. We do see an energy recycler coming in here. Is there any way...
It's Mirage Gate Rope. We're getting some Dragonite action.
Oh... I was kind of hoping for a Kyogre carrying both of them. That's a bit too much to ask, I understand.
Kyogre's in the prizes, and we've got a full board, Ross.
I mean, yes, admittedly, and there's too many cards in hand to realistically do it with the energy in the deck. I know it's a long shot, Joe.
Just show me it.
I just think it would be cool.
Oh, it's only switch cards, so it's not quite the dream. Oh, he had Escape Rope, but is going for the single price instead? Wow, okay.
I see
really surprised why there's no Escape Rope here.
I think the deal here is, you know your opponent's not playing Comfey and can't really play Comfey now, so you're hoping that they've got nothing in their hand, and then you're turning off your Greninja as well. You're basically trying to say, look, if I KO this now, you might draw absolutely nothing for the rest of the game. I agree, though. I would like to have seen an Escape Rope KO one of the Goodra.
Yeah, the only Galaxy Brain play that Ithiel is making here is that Hermanni could have brought up the Energy Goodra and then have access to Melanie and Raihan again to get back into the game. So if Ithiel is big-braining his way around these two supporters, it's a stunning play. And Hermanni has actually drawn essentially a blank, just a basic energy card here. So taking out the Greninja, actually kind of massive right now.
Yeah, I love taking out that Greninja, because here's the thing. If you attach to the active, you might just get KO'd and then you don't get to attack. If you attach to the bench, are you going to have 2 more turns to manually attach? Once again, Hermanni's got a bunch of options, and neither of them are good. Now, we are running down right to the end of the game here. Time is either going to be called on Hermanni's turn or very slowly into Ithiel's, but Ithiel is going to get 2 turns. And that's all they need to actually close this game out.
Well, I also really like this attachment, because now you are also playing around Escape Rope. You're guaranteeing that a Raihan will get you attacking with Rolling Iron. So if you just allow both these Goodras to stay damaged, one gets knocked out next turn by Dragon Gale, then you're having a lone board of Goodra, then your opponent cannot play around the Rolling Iron reduction, that's a tongue twister, and then you can go Moisture Star, Rolling Iron, and hope for the best.
Yeah, I think that's probably what you've got to do here. Now, it does look like time is going to end up being called on Hermanni's turn, which is actually huge. If Ithiel could sneak in a very quick turn, because Ithiel might need 3 turns, right? If I'm Ithiel, draw, attack, go.
Did we see Ithiel draw in time?
I don't know if that worked.
Yeah,
Hopefully
he drew and smacked. Look at that. we need to get confirmation of who is turn 0 here, because it looked like an instant draw smack. We'll try and get confirmation from the judge of what turn we're in here. Regardless, Hermanni finally has activation of Raihan. Ithiel is just a single prize card away, but that prize card is a very chunky Goodra. It's going to be a V-guarded, I believe, Goodra here that will Moisture Star and reduce.
Yeah, that is very big. Now, I believe there's a die there which has gone that Hermanni is turn 1.
Here we go. Okay, yeah, so Ithiel snuck the attack in.
Which is, no.
Oh, no, so Ithiel, yeah, it was turn 0.
Yeah,
right?
he was turn 0. He was just a second too late, which is actually sneaky huge, because I think if Hermanni just Moisture Stars, I don't think Ithiel's got... I think Ithiel is going to be one... There we go, there's a Moisture Star. I think Ithiel's going to be one turn away from winning. And they saw it. They saw I need to attack right now. I need to not be turn 0. But unfortunately, I think they were just a second too late. It looks like that blue die.
Wow,
oh,
look at
there
this.
we see the fist bump. And it does look like Hermanni is just going to be taking a 1-game-0 win. Seconds away from that being a tie.
How could it have gone so wrong? I mean, my goodness. Both players drawing a huge amount of cards and just having nothing available to them in that second game. It was truly bizarre to watch from, I'm sure, positions for both players thinking, well, this is going to be a quick loss. I mean, we looked at Ithiel's hand. It was, what was it, 6 energy and Recycler, started with Manaphy.
Yeah.
You just think, man, I'm out of this tournament. Hermanni also had absolutely nothing, but managed to claw out the 1-0 victory. Goodra just being too large to deal with in those final turns.
Yeah, unfortunately, and that Moisture Star, and I love seeing players being aware of the situation. I love seeing a field there going, hang on a second, I need to not be turn 0, and it was draw attack. Literally could not have done that turn any faster. That was the fastest possible turn. And unfortunately, just needed literally 2 or 3 more seconds. Then they would have not been turn 0. They would have had 2 full turns after. And then the Moisture Star, I don't think would have been enough to actually prevent it. And I think the 2-hit KO would have come out. Unfortunately, it just didn't work. And Ithiel played that game so well. When they eventually got something going, when they had some cards to use, even in the early game, it's little things like being willing to pay the energy just to use a Fleet Foot on the Raikou, knowing you've got the energy recycler. They're not good plays, they're not great plays, but it was the best you had available at the time. Right. And then as you got later into the game, using the